different. Their duration is different for both notes. So over here, this was a minim, but when you come here, it's this is kind of this, which is a what? A quiver. A quiver is a half note. Do you get it? I'm trying to combine lesson what we did last week and this week together so you get a picture. Then now let's move on to the second one. The third note. So again, we are identifying the alto first and the um soprano second. So this is, so I said the steps is you have to first ask yourself, where is the notes? Is it on a line or on a space or on a ledger line? So over here is on the note is in a space, right? And what's the positioning of the space? Is the first space. So then you use your reference as this one. So this F again, because we said the first space is the first space is an F. Then we come to this one, this note, which is the soprano note. You realize that this one, again, you follow the principles I was given. Music is all about principles. So is it on the space or on the line? So we realize that this note is on the line, right? So we go to the line aspect, this side, this lines, this spaces, this for spaces, this for lines. So when we go to the spaces, which uh what line is it on? Sorry, what line is it on? So over here is on the one, two, three, fourth line. So fourth line is what? A D. So this becomes what? A D. Then now let's move on to the next note. So again, this note is what? On a space. What space is it on? Which position of the space is it on? It's on the first space, so it becomes an F. Then now let's go to this soprano note. It's on a space again. But what's positioning of the space? So we have one, two, three. So it's on the third space. So it becomes third space is a C. Let's go to the next one. Um, so again, you ask yourself, is it on a space or on a line? So this on this is the first note here. That's the auto note. It's on a space. Which positioning of the space? First space. So it's an F again. Then the next note, which is the soprano note, is it on the first? It's on a space, right? So is it on the first or second or third space? So you realize that this is it's on the second space. So the second space is an A. So there's an A. Then now let's go to this one. So with this one, again, we ask ourselves, is it on the first? Is the note on a line, a space, or on the ledger? I told you that the ledger lines are lines drawn beneath the normal lines in space. So we realize that these lines, let me use the second bars, and these lines are the normal lines we have for the music. But you realize that they've given a smaller line. So the ledger line is just a small line drawn below or above. It sometimes can be above like this. So the notes can be here. You get it? So those are ledger lines. So we are saying that when the note is on the first ledger line, that's the ledger line drawn just below the first line over here. So it's somewhere here. So when we see a note over there, it's our C. So this is C. Then if there's a note in between this first ledger line and this first line itself, it becomes a D, but there's no note there. The next note is on the first space, and our first space is what? F. Okay, let me just quickly do the second bar here. Let's try and identify these two notes. So with this one, how am I going to identify it? So you realize that this note is not on, it's below the first line, right? This is the first line, which is an E. So below it is a D, right? If you are coming downwards. So um let me try and show what I was doing. So if you have an if you have E and you are coming downwards, this downwards, the next note is a D, then you come to a C. So that's like it's what's going on. It's the same thing going on here. Where's my so over here we know that this when there's a note over here on the first line is an E, but when you are coming downwards, it's a D. That's the first way of identifying it. Second way of identifying it is you imagine that there's a ledger line over here. If there's a ledger line over here, that's we know that when there's a first ledger line and there's a note on it, it's a C. So when I'm going upwards from C, I move to D, then I move to E. So this note is in between the first ledger line and the first line itself. So it's in between C and E. So it becomes what? In between C and E, we have what? D alphabetically. You get it? So it's following a sequence. We have C, D, E, F, G. So when you get to the G, then you start with the A. It doesn't go to H. So when you want to identify this note, which is below, there are two ways of identifying it. You can use your first line as your reference. Your first line is an E over here. So when you are coming downwards, it's a D. When you are counting or when you are saying your alphabet backwards, E, then D, then C, then B. So when that's downwards, but you can that's one way of identifying this note. Other way too is I'm saying that you have to imagine there's a ledger line here. Then if there's a ledger line here, it's a C. So if C you are going upward because it's moving this way. If you are reading this way. So if it's a C, then this becomes a D. Then your first line becomes an E. Okay. So basically this one is a D. Or you can simply put in your head. That's the third way. That's how I memorize it. When I see any note below my first line, when I see any note below my first line, it's a B. It's a D. Yeah. So then this note is on the first space, which is what an F. Okay. So I know it's a lot to grab for just a 30-minute section, but as we practice, as we go on and we practice more, we'll get used to it. Okay, so I think that's all for today's section. If you have any questions, I have just about like a minute left or 2 minutes to address any questions.
Is there a way we can print off the like a blank music sheet and identify the notes on the notation sheets? Do you have something like that?
So when you want to identify the notes, we